Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Brandon Gill doesn't just shut down Kaitlan Collins, he makes her reconsider her entire career in what she calls journalism. Let's dive in.
Congressman, isn't President Trump responsible for who he nominates?
Well, listen, I think that there's a huge problem in this country with rogue judges who are overstepping their authority, abusing their authority to usurp the president's power and to thwart the agenda that voters elected him to do, whether it's deporting illegal aliens or instituting tariffs. That's not democratic. And that's a huge problem. And I think that's what the president is speaking out against right here.
But do you consider a judge that he appointed a rogue judge?
Well, I think in this case, I don't agree with the ruling. I agree with the president. I think that this was an overstep of that court's authority. I think that the American people can see that we have a huge problem right now with large and persistent trade deficits. That's a national security issue. That is an issue that falls under President Trump's powers as commander-in-chief of the United States, and he is taking action to alleviate that problem. That's what he's doing here. I don't think that that ruling was proper, in particular given the context that just a few months ago, the Senate took up the question of whether the president had the power in the first place to institute these tariffs. They decided not to stop him. That this is something that the president was elected to do, a power that he has, and I think these judges are overstepping their authority.
Some people might ask, how do you convince a court that it's an emergency if we've had a trade deficit since 1975?
Well, you can have a trade deficit since 1975 that is getting worse and worse and worse, and is also something that culminates into a problem. Listen, there's a major issue in this country whenever our manufacturing base is being shipped overseas, whenever jobs are being shipped overseas, whenever our entire industrial base has been outsourced, whenever we're reliant on hostile foreign nations for key pharmaceutical inputs, for energy, for all sorts of things that we need in our everyday life. These are the kinds of things that President Trump is going after with these tariffs. That, by any measure, is a national emergency.
Yeah.
It's a problem for our national security, and it's a problem for our economy.
One way to avoid a court challenge would be to have Congress handle this. And Congress has the power to regulate trade. Republicans have majorities in both houses. Why not just have Congress put these tariffs in place?
Well, listen, Congress can do that. I would support it if we could. But that process takes time. The president mentioned that in his post. It would take weeks for us to do that. The president is aggressively acting in our country's interests. Again, doing what the people want him to do as commander-in-chief. That is the purpose of the executive branch, to be able to act swiftly and decisively in our country's interests. So perhaps we'll take that up at some point. But right now, the president put these tariffs in place, and I think that they should stay there.
But on what is your responsibility? Is it regulating trade in the Constitution that it is Congress's responsibility, not the president's?
Congress has oversight over this. This is part of the president's authority. This was a national emergency that the president has talked about at length, that he talked about on the campaign trail, that he's talked about since then. He has the powers to implement these tariffs under his national authority, national emergency authority, and that's exactly what he did.
But Congress could also just implement them, right?
Certainly Congress could, and perhaps there's a role for it. But in this case, President Trump implemented this. These were lawful tariffs. We have been working on the one big beautiful bill. We've got things that we have been focused on. He's been focused here. We'll see what the Supreme Court says here. I think the Supreme Court is going to side with the president.
But you'll wait for the Supreme Court to step in before you could take something that really, theoretically, you could do tomorrow as a member of Congress.
Well, we are working on getting this one big beautiful bill signed into law. We're going to do it by July 4th. That's the deadline that the president would like to see. That's the deadline we have set in Congress. So we have got our work cut out for us as well. One other thing that we're going to be working on now that we got this out of the House is codifying the DOGE cuts and making those permanent, taking all of the work that Elon Musk and the president's team has done in identifying waste, fraud, and abuse, billions of dollars waste, fraud, and abuse that we on the DOJ subcommittee have highlighted time and time again, that the American people are ready to see permanently gotten rid of. That's what we're focused on right now.
Are you going to codify every single thing that Elon Musk said he cut?
Well, the first thing that we're working on is a rescission bill that we're getting from the White House. We're told it's going to come Monday. That's going to claw back money that pays for propaganda outlets like NPR and PBS and defunds parts of USAID. I don't think that we ought to be spending taxpayer dollars on state-sponsored media in this country, and most Americans agree with me there. So that's the first place we're going to start, and then we'll see where we can go from there.
Good grief. The smuggest mug in perhaps all of media, particularly on CNN, definitely has to go to Kaitlan Collins. There is not a single smart question she can ask without delegitimizing herself by having this weird face that says, I know more than you. Ugh. I have no idea how Brandon Gill was able to keep a straight face for this entire thing, because I would have either been laughing or screaming. Because Kaitlan Collins isn't asking smart questions, she's asking smug questions. Here's the difference. Smart questions are, well, why did this judge have this ruling to begin with? Okay? A smart journalist asks the question, why does a judge reach this ruling? And she didn't even ask it in that same way. She basically asked, well, why didn't this Trump-appointed judge rule the way he wanted to? There's a difference between asking a smart question and asking a smug question. And that should be a smart question. Right then and there. She actually has the makings of it, and she refuses. This, again, is a problem that CNN will never be able to fully overcome, because they cater to the very people that, for some reason, find this not only intelligent, but entertaining. Your boos mean nothing. I see what makes you cheer. But Brandon Gill is doing a fantastic job of trying to outflank her every single time. And there are more complex answers to these complex questions. She actually is smart enough to ask a bunch of them here, and she does, but she can't get over the fact that she's being a smug pain in everyone's rear end. I have no idea how people manage to work with that, why people would even bother to go on such a program. I think the equivalent is sort of a Bill Maher in some way, because you know what he's going to do, you know what he's going to say, and that's why you deal with it. But when it comes to Kaitlan Collins, you can only trust her to be a smug pain in the rear end. And she's actually asking smart things. Why did a Trump-appointed judge go against the president that appointed him? Perhaps there is something inside of our laws that make a good case to halt a certain action. And if that is indeed the case, maybe we need to start reforming a few things. Okay? I think we need to start reforming a few things. We have three branches of our government: the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. Originally, and again, I'm not an originalist, okay? As much as I love Anthony Scalia, I had a blast when he told us students that, hey, if you can't amend the Constitution the way the Constitution is set up, well, tough tacos, kid. But he is an originalist was an originalist to some degree. And I'm not. I am someone that believes in the letter of the law, not the spirit of the law. If the spirit of the law mattered, we wouldn't need Congress. But the letter of the law is what matters. Therefore, it's up to Congress to start changing the letter of the law. That's why there's been this huge swing that even Speaker Mike Johnson has had to admit that, hey, we might need to start codifying the Doge cuts. We need to permanently defund USAID. We need to permanently defund NPR and PBS, because these organizations have proven that they cannot be trusted with taxpayer dollars. They cannot be trusted to give good news. They cannot be trusted to use money properly. They can't be trusted with something called soft power. All right, that's the reality of the situation, and now Republicans are starting to get behind it. But when we come to the big, beautiful bill, there's actually been some pushback from fellow conservatives and people that people that I've considered either friends or colleagues are not happy with the bill. And I'm going to be honest, I don't blame them. I don't blame them for being angry at this. But the sad reality is this. Social Security, Medicare, and our interest payments are the biggest payments we have before we even get to defense. We have a population problem. We have a problem of being able to repay our own debts. There are two ways out of it. You either tax your way out of it, which never works. We have tried this time and time and time again. It doesn't work. Or, sorry, there is a third way, but it's absolutely bat guano insane. And that's you print enough money to actually pay down your debt, but now you have inflation and something that used to cost $4 now costs you $4,000. Inflation is not the right way to go, and we almost had that under the last administration. So we need to figure out ways to grow the economy. And the only ways to do that are to incentivize new grounds for economic growth here in the United States. That means tariffs, that means incentivizing manufacturing, that means good government at the local level, which, by the way, there's a funny little trend that I've been noticing for the past 20 years. The Republican states are the ones that are growing. The Democrat states are the ones that are shrinking. I wonder why. I harp on this a lot, and I'm going to bring it up again. Democrat states usually drive out their own middle class and create themselves into a wealthy class and then a poor class. All right, that's just the reality. That's what happens. That's what's going on in Hawaii, New Mexico, California, New York, and of course Illinois. There are there's almost no middle class there anymore. But it's the Republican states that say, yes, we need a healthy middle class. Let's have economic policies to change that and to change for that. And that's why the South has been growing. That's why the Great Lakes states, the old Rust Belt, are about to start growing again, because they have Republican policies in place to actually make government work and to make sure that their states are open for business. The Democrats do not believe in this, and if Kaitlan Collins had any journalistic integrity, she'd be asking those questions a long time before she got her spot on CNN, and starting to ask Brandon Gill in this ridiculously smug voice, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? This is why people don't like lawyers. All right? This is whataboutism to the worst degree, and it's not getting anywhere near truth or reality. All right, that's what Kaitlan Collins does. And Brandon Gill has done a fantastic job here. Again, I have no idea how I'd be able to handle myself. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. My name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Till then, y'all have a good one.